This is the BEnergyAware Podcast. Hi and welcome. Here is another episode of the BEnergyAware Podcast. Please support the podcast by buying the Get Empowered audiobook and by joining us on Patreon. You can find a link to both in the description of this episode. When it comes to this episode, like I say in the description, really there are no highlights to be made, because the only way to listen to it is to listen from start to finish, and I'm telling you, it will be worth it. Terry Tucker has been through many challenges in his life, and especially in the last 9 years, through which, and all up until now, he has been facing cancer, and so far ending up a winner. And even if you find that you don't agree with his choices, if you listen all the way through, you won't be sorry.
I think that over these last 9 years, I have developed, what I call my three truths. And I have a Post-it note. I'm looking at it right now, sitting here at my desk, that I see every time I sit at my desk, and for as long as I'm here. And it has 3 sentences on it. And I'll start by giving you these 3 sentences, and we can take it wherever we want to take it after that. The first one is, you need to control your mind or it will control you. The second one is, you need to embrace the pain and the suffering that you're experiencing in life and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual. And the third one is, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. So I look at those as my truths. As you mentioned, I've been going through cancer for the last 9 years. And recently I've been put on a clinical trial drug to help keep or to at least fight the disease that's in my lungs. And recently I had a nurse come to me and say, Terry, this drug is really beating you up physically. She said, nobody would think anything less of you if you stop the drug. And I tried to explain to her the 3 truths that I just said to you. And I told her, I said, my doctor may take me off this study, or I may die on this study, but I will never quit this study. And I don't think that she really understood where I was coming from, but using those truths, or reminding myself of those truths every day, quitting is not something that I will ever do when it comes to this study. It is very serious. It can be very dark, but for the most part, I do the best I can and try to live a full day and with a smile on my face.
Going back to your first sentence that you pointed out, getting the mind to be strong enough, and that can be a challenge for a lot of people, especially those that have been mentally challenged. And how do you see that, like anyone with those kinds of challenges, and they might be even on medication and so on, how do you get the mind to be stronger?
You do things that make you uncomfortable. I try to describe it this way. If we were to go to a gymnasium and pick up a 10-pound weight, and we did 10 arm curls, but we didn't find that movement to be difficult, then our bicep muscle is never going to grow. However, if you go to that same gym, pick up that same 10-pound weight, and you do arm curls until you exhaust that muscle, until you can't do another repetition, then you're exhausting that muscle. And as a result, it will grow and it will develop. That same tactic works with your mind. If you push or stress your mind, it will grow, it will develop, and you will become a stronger and more determined individual. Now, that's not saying there are certainly people out there that are on medication or that have a certain amount of disease that this isn't going to work for. It's just simply not going to work. But for the vast majority of people that aren't in that category, stressing yourself, putting yourself in positions where you're uncomfortable. I always tell people, if there's something in your heart that you want to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things that you're going to regret are not going to be the things that you did. They're going to be the things that you wish you had done, but you didn't do.
The second sentence, using the pain. to make you stronger, to move forward, to fight even more. And well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. How do you go? I mean, there's this concept, and just the basic healing concept, that you feel to heal, and that you the more you feel, the more you can release all of this energy and those emotions, those heavy things, and then automatically it kind of makes you more healed, and it's easier for you to go through challenging things. So what's your take on that personally?
Well, I guess it's probably easier if I sort of give you a quick dose of my cancer journey, because I think that'll help you understand where I'm coming from when we talk about pain and suffering and using that pain and suffering. So you alluded to back in 2012, I definitely had the biggest challenge in my life occur when I had a callus break open on the bottom of my foot. And it was determined that I had a very rare form of melanoma. As a matter of fact, when I went to my podiatrist, he cut out a cyst. And when he called me 2 weeks later to tell me I had this form of melanoma, he said, "Terry, I've been practicing for 25 years. I've never seen this form of cancer. And I recommend that you go to the MD Anderson Cancer Center and be treated." And what I'm going to describe, I want your audience to understand, is what I experienced during my cancer journey. I realize there are thousands and thousands of people out there who are suffering terribly with their diseases, whether those diseases be mental or physical. And I make no claims to have the market cornered on suffering at all. But one thing I have learned is that suffering is one of life's greatest teachers. So at MD Anderson, I had 2 surgeries to remove the tumor and all the lymph nodes in my groin. And after I healed, I was put on a weekly injection of a drug called interferon to help keep the disease from coming back. Interferon, at least for me, was a horrible, nasty, debilitating drug. And I took those weekly injections for 4 years and 7 months before I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever of 108 degrees from the toxicity of the drug. But while I was on interferon, it gave me severe flu-like symptoms. I try to put this in perspective with people. Imagine having the flu every week for 2 or 3 days for 5 years. And that's pretty much what I went through. And one thing I learned during all my pain and suffering is that you have 2 choices. You can succumb to the debilitating discomfort and misery, or you can learn to embrace it and use it to make you a stronger and better human being. I chose the latter. I mean, you and I both know we're hardwired. Our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. Where I am is that most people want to run away from pain. I've been through so much that literally I take it now and I turn it inside and I use it as energy, or I burn it as fuel to help make me a stronger and more determined individual.
And where did the emotional pain as well, did that come up at certain times?
It did. And I talk to people on podcasts, and I realize that sometimes I come across like I have all the answers, that I've been through so much that I've got it all figured out. I don't. I get scared just like everybody else does. I get nervous, every time I have to go to the hospital for treatment. So I feel those same emotions that everybody else does. It's just I've learned to use that and, like I said, flip it inside and use it as fuel and burn it and say, okay, I'm going to hurt tomorrow, or I'm going to hurt today, or today's going to be a terrible day. And I know that, and I know it's coming. But you know what? I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to stand up to it. I'm going to use it to make me a tougher individual. You just don't quit. You've got to do it. I guess you also know that you have another choice. You don't have to do it. I don't have to continue on this therapy. I can stop. I can quit. Nobody is forcing me. Nobody's got a gun to my head. But it's just my psychological makeup is I'm not going to quit. I will not quit. My doctor may pull me off of it. I may die on the study, but I will not quit the study.
But when you thought about different options, and you said it was a choice, like what other choices were you considering at the time?
Well, initially, so last year I had an undiagnosed tumor that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And really, my only treatment option was the amputation of my leg above the knee, right in the middle of this global pandemic. I remember having the surgery. Literally, my wife dropped me off at the hospital. Having, hope it works out. Had nobody with me. I was the only surgery that day. And after that, it was recommended that I start chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs. Well, I didn't want to start chemotherapy. I had gotten to the point where it's like, you know what? I think this is, I've fought hard enough. I've lived a good life. I have no regrets. I have no worries or concerns about dying. And it's funny because we've always done things as a family. I came home, I told my wife and daughter, so we had a family meeting and I got outvoted 2-1. So I started chemotherapy. I mean, it's sort of a joke, but in all honesty, it's really kind of the way it happened. My wife and daughter was like, no, you're not done yet. You're not finished with this fight. We're in this together. And I remember at one time in my life, I was a policeman, and I was a policeman in the Cincinnati Police Academy here in the United States in Ohio. And I remember our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we love the most to class. And as we trained and learned how to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned that we will fight harder for the people we love than we will fight for ourselves. And he wanted us to realize that if we're fighting for our lives at 3:00 in the morning, this is more than just us. There's somebody at home, whether it's your wife, your husband, your spouse, your significant other, your mom and dad, whoever it is, they're there with you too. This is more than just you. This is much bigger than yourself. And that was a reinforcement to realize that you're going to fight for the people you love much harder than you're going to fight for yourself.
And the third sentence, not giving up. And a lot of people give up. And again, that's a choice. And what made you really, really continue on and on and on and on, regardless of the pain, regardless of discomfort, and so on?
So I guess it's sort of a culmination of all the things I've experienced in my life. You can't tell this from us sitting here, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I played basketball in college. And when I was in high school, I had 3 knee surgeries that threatened the ability for me to play in college. And actually, I got a scholarship to play in college. And I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And without basketball, there's a very good chance I would not have had the ability to go to college. So there was that, hey, you may not play again. There was the determination to make sure that happened again. One of the things you learn in the police academy, or at least that I was taught, is that you're never out of the fight. No matter how badly you're injured, no matter how much you're hurting, you're never out of the fight. So when it came to later in my life, when I got this cancer, I had this sort of repertoire of experiences to fall back on and say, okay, this was a tough time in your life and you overcame that. You were taught that no matter what happens, you're still in the fight. Now you've got to apply those to this very difficult and potentially terminal disease. And so for me, it was really a culmination of all the things in my life that came together, in addition to, I talk about the 3 F's, faith, family, and friends, that without them, this would have been a much, much more difficult journey.
Yeah, throughout it all, this reoccurring, like cancer kept coming back in all these different forms, in all these different places in your body. And so addressing the underlying cause of cancer, how did that, like after it has repeated so many times, were you able to, by the end of it, by last year or this year, were you able to actually unravel what's underneath it all?
I've asked that question to my doctor more than I can tell you. I have summer before last, I had a genetic study done of the 88 genes that the doctors know today definitely cause cancer or that they suspect cause cancer. And I had no mutations in any of those genes. And that's just not for the melanoma that I have. I mean, that also includes, breast cancer and lung cancer and things like that. I have no mutations that would predispose me to having a form of cancer or another form. And I've asked my doctor, why did this happen? Why did I get a skin cancer on the bottom of my foot? Because I can tell you this, when I was a kid, I was never laying out sunning myself with my feet up in the air. So I said, why did this happen? And he has said several times, we don't know. We think that it may be a trauma related issue where you might have had a trauma to that area of your foot. And as a result, years later, you got this form of cancer. But I have no recollection whatsoever of ever having a trauma. I've never broken a bone in that foot or anything like that. I've never even sprained that ankle. I've sprained the other ankle, but I never sprained that ankle. So I have no idea. And sometimes there just isn't an answer. And in my case, I just have to live with the fact that I don't know why I got it, but I have it. And so I have to deal with it.
Just one other thing that I'm personally curious about is, people that have cancer, that get cancer, that like you've chosen to get a doctor's advice, and then you've really trusted the medical system, and you've applied those. You went through the treatments and so on. I mean, there are. Why I want to talk about this because a lot of people choose to go the alternative route and try alternative ways of treating the cancer or the body and so on to heal. And then there are people that combine both. So were you ever presented with those options, and have you ever considered them at all, or?
I have, and I do. There are certain things when several years ago, the doctor used to use a procedure called a PET scan, where I was injected with radioactive sugar, with the idea being that cancer cells have a higher metabolism than the other cells in your body, and they will pick up that sugar at a higher rate, and they will glow because the sugar is radioactive, and you'll be able to determine where in the body the cancer is. Well, it didn't take a genius to figure out that, well, if that's the case, then I should probably stay away from sugar as much as I possibly can. So I won't say I don't. I do from time to time, have a chocolate shake or something like that. But for the most part, I stay away from sugar. I every morning have a fruit smoothie. I call it a smoothie. I mean, we could spend another hour having me tell you everything that's in it, but it's fruits, it's vegetables, it's nuts, it's honey, natural, all natural kind of things that I am hoping the body will use to help heal itself. And so, yes, I do not dismiss those things by any sense of the imagination. And I also believe that, your life should be shaped by the decisions that you made, not by the ones that others made for you or that you didn't make. So I'm sure my doctor at times is ready to kind of hit me over the head, because I am constantly asking, why? Why are we doing this? Tell me about another alternative we could do. I just don't turn my care over to him and say, okay, whatever you say goes. I ask a lot of questions, and as a result, I ask those questions because I read. Like you said, I look at other forms of therapy, and, well, why is this better than that? And okay, you want to do surgery? Is there any other option I could do, and stuff like that? So I try to combine those. I certainly have leaned more toward the traditional medicine, and I've had some success with that. I mean, you could argue. I mean, I've been alive for 9 years now. I mean, they didn't think I'd make it to 5. So I think you have to kind of look at the totality of the circumstances and see what works for you and what you're comfortable doing.
At a certain point after all this, like, you must be like, like, there must be a day when it's okay, it's done. Like, this is over. This is the past. There's nothing, no more of that. I've done what I needed to do. I fought. I made some decisions. I stayed through all of it. And, do you see that day for yourself coming where the cancer is gone and you're absolutely free and you can just enjoy the rest of your life?
I certainly pray for that every day. As I mentioned, faith is an important part of my life, and I try to spend every day for at least an hour in prayer. I've met a lot of people with different forms of cancer over the number of years that I've had it, and I pray for them. And I would be lying if I said I don't pray for myself as well. I do. I hope that happens. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with that. I mean, I have last year when I had the amputation and the tumors were found in my lungs, I went to the mortuary in the cemetery with my wife, and my entire funeral is planned out. And I've been accused of being defeatist. You sit here and you talk about, you're never going to quit and stuff like that. And the way I look at it is, everybody's going to die, but not everybody's going to live. And I've been through, my father died shortly after I got out of college, and I had to go with my mother to the cemetery after he died, and to the funeral home and to the church and all that. And it was exhausting. And I look at having planned my funeral as a final gift that I can give to my family so that when I do die, and like I said, we all will. I'm hoping it's a long time from now, but they make one phone call and it's taken care of. But the way I look at it is, or the way I feel is, right now, in my mind's eye, I can't picture myself in that casket. Not yet. I'm sure there's going to come a time where I can. And I think that's probably going to be, what you kind of asked. There'll be a time when it's going to be time to go. It's going to be time to move on to whatever is next for me. And like I said, I think I found my purpose in life, and I live that. And as a result, I'm not afraid of death. Death doesn't scare me in a way. And this is going to sound kind of weird. It almost excites me. I'm interested. I'm curious to see what's on the other side of this. I mean, I know there are people who don't believe in that this is it, and that's great. And if that's what you believe, that's fine. That's not what I believe. So I'm interested to see what's on the other side. Maybe I'll be disappointed, but I just look around our world. I look at the birth of our daughter. I look at, I live in Colorado in the United States in the Rocky Mountains. I've seen elk move through the foothills in the snow. It's so beautiful. There's so much good here that there's got to be something beyond this. And I'm kind of interested to see what that is. And I hope I get the opportunity to experience it.
Well, you must be an inspiration for more than a few people. So my next question would be, with new generations and they are being presented with those challenges, maybe similar challenges to yours. And have you found a way, other than through a book or books, or in your like speaking engagements and in being a guest on podcasts, on radio shows and so on, things like that, how do you see yourself in supporting younger generations and generations to come when it comes to these things, and being an inspiration and motivation for them, or a form like or a real support?
Yeah, a lot of people are critical of young people today. That it's all about them, and I certainly from time to time get in that mode where it's all about you. The greatest generation who fought in World War II, their mantra was, "What can I do to help?" And for me, I can't make you do anything. I may be able to influence you in certain ways, so there's a certain way I want to conduct my life. And if my life serves as an example for you, and it may serve as a negative example, I don't want to be like him. I don't want to go down that road. I would do it differently. That's great. At least what my life will have done is caused you to think about your life and how you want to live that life. And I'm older. I'm 60 years old. I've seen a lot of things in my life, many of them good, many of them not so good. And what I've experienced are, I've seen a lot of people die, and the people who go kicking and screaming from this world, has been my experience, are the people who never did anything with their lives. They never found or looked for their purpose and lived it. And so when the end comes, they want more time. I want more time to go do those things that I didn't do. Well, you don't have any more time. So I try to, especially with young people, there needs to be an urgency. And it doesn't have to be like you got to go crazy, but there needs to be an urgency of trying to figure out why you were here and what you're supposed to do. And if you do that and figure that out and live that life, I can promise you at the end of your life, you will be calm, and your demise, your death will not be oh my gosh, he could have done, he should have done, he would have done. No, you did it. You were here for a purpose. You did what you were supposed to do. Now it's time for you to move on. That's what I believe. Now you may look at that and say, you know what? Nope. I'm going to go for all the gusto I can right now I'm going to live fast. I'm going to make money. I can promise you, making money, having power, having influence, they're empty. It doesn't mean anything, because in the end, you can't take any of that with you. I always say the only thing you can take beyond this life is the love that you have in your heart.
Yeah, well, when we're on the subject of young people, they have their own set of challenges, and many challenges today, with overflowing with all this information and possibilities and new technologies and so on. No wonder they can be so lost. So what would you say to a younger person today? How does one find their purpose? How does one discover their purpose in life?
One of the things I have said is put down your devices, put down your cell phone, put down your iPad, put down all this stuff. Yes, these devices allow us to be probably connected more so than at any other time in the history of the world, and yet I see us as being less connected to each other. I always tell people, put it down. Sit down with that person across from you and have a conversation. And I wrote a book last October called Sustainable Excellence. And one of the chapters I devoted in the book was about listening. But listening to understand as opposed to listening to reply. And I think, and I've done this, and you probably have too, we're in a conversation and it's exciting and we want to get our 2 cents in there. And you don't really listen to what the other person said. You just want them to finish what they're saying so that you can get your 2 cents in. Yeah, I get that. And sometimes that's fun and it's important. But for the most part, I want to be able to understand where you're coming from. One of the jobs that I had within my police career was as a hostage negotiator. And one of the things that as a policeman that I can discern from you by looking at you is what you might be thinking or doing. If you're balling up your fists, you might be getting ready to fight. If you're looking around, you might be getting ready to run. So I can do things like that. When I was a negotiator, you weren't in front of me. You potentially were a block away, and I was talking to you on the phone. So I had to try to figure things out based on what you were saying, what you weren't saying, and how you were saying it. Mm-hmm. So in order for us to understand each other, in order for us to really connect with each other, it can't be this. It's got to be what you and I are doing. We're talking. You're trying to understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to understand the questions that you're asking me. So I would ask, and again, I don't think it has to be difficult. It's simple. Go have a conversation with somebody, anybody, the homeless guy down the street, the person in your grocery store, the person at the gas station when you're feeling whatever. Just say hi. It's amazing how much you can brighten somebody's day just by saying, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how you doing?" It doesn't have to be this. You can talk to people, and I think we've lost that. And if we could get back to that, that would be one thing. One other thing I would say is that I've experienced in my life, and people are going to have to determine whether they want this in their life, being part of something that's bigger than yourself, I think leads to fulfillment in life. It's not about you. It's about us. We succeed together. We do not succeed separately.
You being such a, person that you strike me as a person that really, when you have a job to do or you do something, you really give it your all. You give it your best. And so, what was, I'm just being curious here. What would you say, like, that must have served you really well in anything that you were doing in your life? So my curiosity is, what was the most, let's say, what was the most fulfilling job that you ever done, or a thing that you were doing in the past, throughout your life? Was it one thing? Were there a few more things? You keep referring to your police career in the police department. So what was the most fulfilling job or a thing that or a project that you were doing or involved in?
Without a doubt, the most important thing that I've ever done in my life is be a husband and a father. Mm-hmm. And there was a time in my life where I didn't think I wanted children. And I am so glad that turned around. And my wife and I we've been married for 27 years. We have one child, a daughter who's 24 years old, and she's an adult now. And that, without a doubt, realizing when she was born that another human being was solely relying on me for everything they needed in this world. And I look at that now, and I hope I taught my daughter all the good things, all the important things that she needs to know. And I look at it right now with what I'm going through. Maybe what I'm teaching her now is how to have a good death. Maybe what I'm teaching her now is how to live your life to the fullest. And then when it's over, move on to what's next. And if I'm doing that, then my job, I guess, on this planet, I think is something that will be fulfilled. But I think my passion, and again, I don't think you can, you can say that, I just have one purpose. I don't think people do. I think people, as their lives go on, they have different types of purposes and things like that. And I talk sometimes about success. We all want to be successful. I want to be a successful author when I write a book. You want to be successful as a podcaster and stuff like that. And over time, I've started to think that success is what we do. We are successful. Maybe we ought to focus on a different word. And that word is significance. Significance is what we do for others. And don't get me wrong, I think you can be both. I think you can be successful in your career or whatever you do, and you can also be significant in the lives of other people. So maybe if we stopped focusing so much on I have to be successful, and we focus a little more on I want to be significant, things might be a little bit different.
I guess my last question, again, when it comes to using one's time, when it comes to using your time day by day, every day, how does a person, without any difficult circumstances, without any major challenges, can a person really become motivated I mean, there are people that love things, love to play instruments, they love to do sports, they love to do all kinds of things. And they may want to turn it into a career because they love it so much. They want to do it and they want to do a lot of it. And so my curiosity, again, when it comes to your outlook and your opinion on this is, how does one, without, if you're just swarmed with all this information today and all these technologies and you're not so sure what you want to do, where do you start? How do you motivate yourself to get up every day and use the whole day for something significant?
I guess I'm starting to sort of think through that question a little bit more, and it's an excellent question, and I think everybody should think about that. And I guess the way, we sort of live our lives in a chronological order. We day 1, day 2, day 3 to 4. And I'm starting to think that maybe if we looked at our lives, instead of saying, okay, we'll start here and we'll end here, maybe we should look at here. Maybe we should look at the end point of our life. And I think if we do that, that has a tendency to allow us to see the big picture of our life. Who did we influence? Where was I at this point in my life, and why was I there? And how did I get from there to here? I always ask people to think, what is the big picture of your life? What will your legacy be? I always tell people, don't die before you're dead. We all know these people who get up every day, go through the same motions, do the exact same thing. Those people are never growing. And if you're not growing, then you're dying. I always ask people to think about this. What will be the one sentence that people will say about you at your funeral? Nobody wants to think about their funeral. But what will be that one sentence? Because that one sentence will define what people see how you spent your life. I don't know. When I wrote the book, I actually had when I was a basketball coach, I had a player who had moved here to Colorado with her boyfriend. And my wife and I had dinner with her. And I said, gee, I'm really excited to watch you find and live your purpose. And she got real quiet and she said, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? And I said, I don't know what your purpose is. That's what your life should be about. And it's not about, at the end of your life, the tombstone with your name and, your dates on it. That's not what's important. What's important is the love and the compassion and the hope that you weave in and out of the hearts of the people that you touch. If you keep that in mind and you keep searching for the reason you were here, and like you say, it may be to play sports, it may be to play the trumpet or the piano or the guitar or the drums or whatever it is, or to write books or to be an accountant or to take over your family business, whatever it is, it will reveal itself as long as you search for it, and you search for it with an open heart.
Thanks for listening, and let me know your thoughts. Get in touch with me through Instagram at BEnergyAware or through my website, BEnergyAware.com. What would mean a lot to me is if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And please share this podcast with your friends. I'm Bran, your host, and I'll talk to you next Friday.